Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
Welcome to Nightlight, everybody. So glad you could join me today. This is going to be a very, very interesting show because it is, as one of the reviewers of this book called it, it's a highly recommended paradigm buster, and it is that, and in every good way possible. I have Dr. Judy, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Tsafrir, I hope that was right, with us today, and she has written a book called Sacred Psychiatry, Bridging the Paranormal and Transpersonal to Transform Health and Consciousness. And it's an amazing book, and you look at the title and you think, oh my gosh, this is going to be such a heavy duty one, I'm not sure I can get through it. And the reality is, it is probably one of the easiest reads and most intriguing and informative reads that I have been through in a long time. Let me tell you a little bit about this. Our previous experience with conventional psychiatry likely consisted of suppressing symptoms with pharmaceuticals without considering you as a whole person. It's probable that there was little exploration of the power of the sacred to promote healing, which is especially crucial in our current climate of widespread fear and disconnection. In this book, you'll be introduced to a diverse range of holistic approaches to healing. This book offers invaluable guidance on how to develop a personal spiritual practice and highlights the profound significance of fulfilling the soul's purpose. It illustrates the usefulness of astrology, emphasizes how toxic relationships undermine healing, and showcases the remarkable healing power of food as medicine. Sacred Psychiatry also provides a holistic framework for weaning off of psychiatric pharmaceuticals and highlights treatable but frequently overlooked complex chronic conditions such as mold toxicity, mast cell activation syndrome, and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Judy is a holistic healer with a private psychiatry and psychoanalysis practice in Newtown, Massachusetts. She's a board-certified adult and child psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, and is on the faculty of Harvard Medical School and the Boston Psychoanalytic Institute, and she teaches and supervises at the Cambridge Health Alliance. And her come of fight is even longer than that, but we only have an hour show, so I'm not gonna give you chapter and verse. Rest assured, she is probably one of the most qualified people to talk on this that I have ever had on the show. Welcome to the show, Judy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited for our conversation.
Well, I'm looking forward to this so much because so often, and I know a lot of very respected people that are in your field, or one of your fields, one or two of your fields, and they seem to be very non-flexible in considering the other modalities that can be used for healing, and you have stretched yourself to the point where you're looking at the total person, and not only psychically or or personality wise, but spiritually as well. And that, to me, is the only way we can really have healing of any sort at all. What
I'm in complete agreement with you about that. That leaving out the sacred spiritual dimension of a person is really, it needs to be included in order for a person to truly heal.
Well, that and the fact that you go even into past lives. I mean, you really are taking in the full spectrum of the kind of paranormal and things that can affect a person's reality. And we are a subtotal of so much more than just this lifetime. So that I was blown away by how you flowed into all aspects so very easily in applying the different tools that you use. Where and when did you decide that you were going to break away and incorporate all of this other amazing healing material into your practice?
Well, it wasn't really like a conscious decision. I had practiced as a fairly conventional psychoanalyst, psychiatrist, although I was never a psychiatrist who, was a psychopharmacologist. I prescribed rather sparingly. But when I was 49, both my parents died within 3 months of each other, as well as my marriage ended, and I had 3 little children, and I was just really overwhelmed and was kind of just putting one foot in front of the other, and decided to consult an astrologer for the first time. And this is not as odd as it might sound, because I'd been exposed to astrology because my dad was interested in it, but he kept it in the closet because he was also a psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, and he was fearful for his reputation if anybody would know that he had an interest in astrology. And so I went to see this astrologer, and I was so astonished by what she had to say to me and how she could understand me and how she had so much insight into who I am and my life, having never met me before, that I went back to see her a number of times. I wanted to look at the birth charts of my children and of my parents and of anyone in my life who was important. And finally, I resolved that, I needed to learn to do this myself. I was very, very drawn to learning this ancient wisdom tradition. So I apprenticed myself to a well-known astrologer named Stephen Forrest. And after I completed a whole course of study with him, I started on a second course of study with another excellent astrologer, Maurice Fernandez. And I always say that astrology was kind of like the gateway drug for me. It really opened me up spiritually, and it led to me exploring all kinds of other things. And as I learned about other things, I would sort of organically include them in my practice. So, so I did, some explorations in energy medicine and shamanism, but also in things like functional medicine and getting to the root cause of like physical problems on a kind of 3D level. Learned about those kinds of things. So, over time, as I learned one thing after another, I just kept including them in what I could offer to my patients.
Well, a great way to go for sure. I have a dabbling in, a lot of different modalities myself. One area that I was fascinated with, and I had to do a lot. It sent me to the books to learn a little bit more too, because it's something that I had never even heard any astrologer say to me. And I know that I remember them talking about Chiron in my chart, but just fleetingly. And I'm familiar with Saturn return. I'd never heard Chiron return and what how heavily Chiron can actually, influence everything within your life. Can you kind of enlighten everybody a little bit on that? Because
sure,
Chiron
I'd be glad to do that.
Fantastic.
Yes, so I said that I was 49 at the time when all of this happened, and that is the time of the Chiron return. The Chiron return happens when a person is 49 or 50 years old. And a planetary return, the idea of that is that every planet has an orbit. And so, like the Earth goes around the Sun in 365 days, the Moon goes around the Earth in 28 days, Saturn goes around the Sun in 29 years. So every planet has its orbit, and Chiron's orbit is about 50 years. And when a planet returns to the place that it was during the natal chart, so at the time of your birth, so it's 50 years going around the sun, comes back to where it was, the issues that are associated with that planet are prominent and are available in a way for processing and reworking. So Chiron has to do with some kind of way in which we are essentially wounded. And there's a whole myth of Chiron, which I'd be glad to tell that myth if you'd like me to.
Oh, sure.
But,
yeah.
Okay, so Chiron was born of trauma. He was the product of a rape. Zeus lusted after a nymph named Philyra, and she changed herself into a mare in order to run away from him, and he changed himself into a stallion, and he raped her, and she gave birth to Chiron, who was a centaur, half human and half horse. And she was so repulsed by him that she rejected him and abandoned him. And he was adopted and taken in by Apollo, who raised him and who educated him and who provided him with the kind of finest teachers in education. And Chiron grew up to be a very different sort of centaur than the normal centaur. Like centaurs are kind of vulgar and rowdy and coarse and crude, and Chiron was extremely refined. And he was an astrologer, he was a mathematician, he was a musician, he was an herbalist, he was a master healer. He knew all about the arts of war, and the kings would send their sons to him to be educated by him. He was like a mentor. And then one day, Hercules, who was one of his students, there are many different versions of the myth, but this one is the one that I'm telling. Hercules Yes?
No, I agreed with you. Go for it.
Oh, okay. So Hercules accidentally shot Chiron in the leg with an arrow tipped in the blood of the Hydra, and that was created a wound that could not be healed. So there's Chiron has this moniker, the wounded healer. Like, despite all of his, enormous skills, he was not able to heal himself, and he was put in unending agony. And then, sort of parallel to this story, is the story of Prometheus, who was chained to a rock as a punishment by the gods for giving fire to humankind, and an eagle came daily to peck out his liver, and he was also in torment. And Chiron, who could not die because he was half immortal because of Zeus being his father, offered to exchange places with Prometheus. And so Prometheus was freed and Chiron took his place, and then the gods were so moved by Chiron's altruism that they freed him as well and put him up in the sky as a constellation. So, Chiron and the orbit of Chiron, and there's a lot of disagreement about Chiron. Like, is he an asteroid? Is it a comet? Like, what is Chiron? There's disagreement. But the orbit of Chiron is also really fascinating because it goes in between the planet Saturn and the planet Uranus. And Saturn is the last planet that was known to the ancients. It was the last planet that could be seen with the naked eye. And Uranus is the first planet that was discovered with the advent of the telescope in, I think it was 1784. So Chiron weaves between like the 3D reality of like time and space and the transpersonal reality of that is represented by Uranus. And so Chiron is neither just, human and neither just immortal or transpersonal, but a combination. He's a centaur. He's half human, half horse. So it reflects something about our own dual nature, that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. We all have wounds that are in some kind of way not totally able to be healed. That, we may become more skillful at dealing with them. We may know, what our issues are, but they don't just like go away. There's things that are kind of with us for life. And yet those wounds that we have that are so painful can also become the source of our greatest genius and strength. And so Chiron represents all of that. And in my psychiatry practice, it's really not uncommon for a person to come to see me when they're 49 years old and they're having their Chiron return. Like there's a disproportionate number of people who show up in my office at that time. And it's because there's some kind of internal pressure to deal with something, to rework something. And people very often at that time feel a desire to spiritualize their life. And so it's a profound life developmental passage, and it offers a lot of opportunity for healing and for psycho-spiritual evolution.
It's fascinating because at 50, women, in ancient times, this was at 50 plus, this was the period of time that was called the crone period, where the female would get into the spiritual, the internal stuff, been a wife,
right.
been a mother.
We're released from the reproductive cycling and hormonal. It's like a real shift biologically for women. And for both men and women, mortality comes into focus at that time in a way that's new.
Oh, absolutely. I have a friend who's 82, and I don't believe we've ever had a conversation where he hasn't said, well, we're going to die, and, we're beyond expiration date. And it's sort of like it is an issue, but at the same time, if you're focused on an end that you don't know when it's going to come, you're ignoring the present, which can be very, very growthful and exciting and all sorts of stuff. So I think what fascinates me about your practice is that you really do include so many different modalities, and I love the part that tinged me, and and I admit to it, food is a medicine, and quite often, we get to lots of people are stress eaters. Lots of people, will just say, the hell with it, I'm going to eat whatever I want. Things are so miserable, they can't get any worse, and they always can. So that eating is definitely a form of medication and meditation. And it's sort of like today, so much of what is available to eat, drink, and be merry is so bad for us. It's awful.
Yes, that is unfortunately very much the case. And, sometimes a person comes to see me in my practice and they're eating like a standard American diet. They're eating a lot of processed and packaged food. They're, having one or two drinks every night, And that's what I call like low-hanging fruit. I know that if they clean up their diet and start to follow an anti-inflammatory diet and that they stop drinking alcohol, that they're going to feel so much better so fast, you know. It's incredible that people a lot of times do not link the way that they are feeling with what they're eating. You know, it's kind of astonishing. And a lot of people, too, have food sensitivities that they're not aware of. You know, they're not linking the fact that gluten makes them feel really tired and bloated and low energy, or that dairy makes them depressed. You know, they're just not connecting the dots. And so if you're able to help a person, first of all, get rid of the anti-inflammatory foods to begin with, and, add a lot of fruits and vegetables that have so many great phytonutrients and minerals, and tea, they have energy, they're filled with energy. These just make a huge difference in a person's level of well-being. But it's not, there's very, very, very little teaching in medical school about nutrition. And people, it's sort of astonishing, people who have serious gastrointestinal conditions, their GI doctor will say, no, it doesn't really make any difference what you eat. This is not about that. They'll say this to them. It's incredible.
Or, it's funny. I have chronic sinus stuff. I'm allergic to just about everything. I've come to the conclusion I don't belong on this planet. And when I finally went to an allergist to be tested, I did find that I was allergic to wheat. I knew I was allergic to milk products and a couple of other things. And it was like, if I had been tested when I was in my 20s or 30s and was aware of that, I probably wouldn't have a lot of the issues I have today, because I didn't know I should avoid that kind of stuff. And especially today, when they're making so much gluten-free stuff on the market, it's fabulous. And then, of course, you've got your lactate-free milks and stuff like that. It's easy to eat and to cook to your allergies if you know what they are. But most people don't have any idea what they're allergic to.
Yes, that's very true. And I actually, myself, don't put a lot of stock in testing. I want people to do an elimination diet, I don't think that really gluten and dairy is helpful for most people, So if a person is having psychiatric symptoms, I sort of don't want anyone to have gluten or dairy. But there's other foods that are also commonly allergenic, for instance, like eggs. But for some people, eggs are fine, and they're a very helpful food. And it's good to be able to include them in the diet. So I recommend that a person avoid eggs for a few months and then systematically reintroduce them. I don't advise them to reintroduce gluten or dairy. I just think those are sort of inherently inflammatory.
Oh yeah. No, I speak from experience on that one. And I think that what is so, when you take on a patient, you almost require them to go on the total program, not just talking about their personal life and things like that. You're looking
totally.
at
I interview them and before we even set up an appointment to try to assess their level of motivation. Because if they're not going to be able or willing to do the things that I want them to do, I can't help them, because I don't want to get into prescribing a bunch of pharmaceuticals. That's not what my practice is about. So, the person really needs to be motivated, and it's a lot of work to take a holistic approach to your health. Margaret Mead? I think she said, it's easier to change a person's religion than to change their diet. You know, like it's hard. People are very attached to certain foods. And the food that is like the one that people resist the most giving up is cheese. And there's an effect that cheese has on the brain, and gluten does the same thing. It attaches to the morphine receptors. So there literally is like a physical addiction to these foods. And it's very, very hard to ask people to not have them.
Well, I have to admit that while I know what the reaction will be, there are some times when I just look at something and say, it's worth not going out all day tomorrow just to enjoy it today.
Right. Well, that's a calculus. That's a very conscious decision. You know, like you decide, okay, it's worth it to me.
Well, you know, and the other thing is I don't think people equate the foods you eat with your mental capacity and what you're going through within your everyday life. If you're having trouble with people, or if you're having, I love the fact that you addressed even energy vampires. If there are difficulties in your everyday life that you're going to a therapist for, the fact that the food you eat could easily be adding to the problem, maybe not causing it, but adding to it, so that you can kind of take 100%. The layers away and you know, sort of eliminate the problem. And you know, what you're doing is educating a person into a whole new aspect of life, which is just wonderful, because you're getting into the spiritual and all of those aspects on top of the psychological, and they have to go hand in hand, or somebody can't be whole.
Agreed. Very much agreed.
There's something else that you also talked about acupuncture and essential oils, and even how to prepare some of the essential oils. I mean, your book is not cut and dried anything, because you give so much detail in how you can utilize all these different technologies and modalities to bring yourself into wholeness. And I'm not saying, you know, if you do have an issue,
is what it's about.
Yeah. And you know, and post-traumatic stress is something else that seems to be a term that people are throwing around like crazy these days. Used to be depression or anxiety, and everybody has PTSD from something. But you know, our lives are complicated. It's a crazy world, and it's even crazier right now. So that anybody having trouble focusing on what's going on and trying to have a full, rich life, it's a job in and of itself. But
it is. These are very stressful and transformative times.
Well, and, you know, a lot of people who come to me and, you know, I want to change my job, or I want to find the love of my life. And you know, I basically always bring it back to, first of all, you have to love yourself. You have to deal with your own issues. You have to be the kind of person you want to attract in order to attract that person. So don't
great advice.
You know, it's sort of like work on yourself, and the more you work on yourself, the more you are attracting other people who are doing the same. So
you know that the Hawaiian prayer, Ho'oponopono?
No, I didn't know that.
So there's this Hawaiian prayer. It's an ancient prayer, and I love the Hawaiian spirituality in general. I just really resonate with it. But it's a forgiveness prayer, and you can say it, you know, in response to, you know, like energetically, like tuning into somebody you need to forgive. But I like to recommend it to my patients and to use it personally for self-forgiveness, because that's such a huge thing for people. So many people are so, you know, self-critical and mad at themselves, and, you know, just they're hard on themselves. And Ho'oponopono, ho'o means make, and pono means right. And pono is like right with yourself and right with the world. So ho'oponopono. And there's 4 lines, and they're very simple. And you say it to yourself. You say, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. And you do that, you say it like 8 times to yourself. You take a few breaths before you start, you close your eyes, and you just say that to yourself. Very powerful energetically, and makes such a difference if people are like in good relationship with themselves.
Oh, absolutely. And, if you're not in a good relationship with yourself, you're going to attract a relationship that isn't. And it works that way. But
yes.
You talked about energy vampires too, which I think was interesting, and toxic relationships. And I would imagine that some people do come to you for toxic relationship issues.
What's sort of sad is that people come to me who are in toxic relationships, and they're suffering the effects of being in a toxic relationship, but very often they're not willing to get out of it. They are, they're, for whatever reason, they are not willing to let go or to say goodbye. And it's very hard, they may make a lot of changes in another area of their life. They may have been very locked professionally, and they're able to make strides in that domain, but sometimes they just hang on to this really limiting, destructive relationship. They're just too afraid to let go of it.
That is sad. It's you can't cure it, but you can cure yourself from it and walk away. And I tell people that if you've done everything you can possibly do, it's possibly a kindness to let go and move on, so that the other person can find somebody better. And I had one person
or kindness to yourself,
Oh yeah, and the only place that I get really crazy is we're staying together for the children. And when somebody pulled that on me, I looked at them and said, you're teaching your children the kind of relationship they'll seek when they get older. Do you really want your child to go through what you've gone through?
Yes.
Because
that makes a lot of sense.
Kids learn relationship from their parents, and these people were sleeping in separate bedrooms. They weren't talking to each other, but they were there for the children. And that's baloney.
Yeah. Agreed.
But it's we tell ourselves so many things to justify inappropriate things that it's really, and the more intelligent people, have you found that the more intelligent a person is, the harder it is to get them to change?
No, I haven't found that.
I just find that the rationalization they throw at you is really profound. So,
well, certainly, and rationalization is, I'm familiar with that, but I haven't really seen a correlation between intelligence and stuckness.
I have found that, now I'm a spiritual counselor, so, when I start to go into issues like this, they say, well, I'm there for them because I'm teaching them, and it's like, no. Get off the pedestal before you fall. It's amazing. Yeah, I have found that the most intelligent people are the hardest ones to kind of walk around in the circle and kind of put a mirror in front of them. But there was one other part of here. You did mention in the book that you use ketamine in this assisted psychotherapy, and recently ketamine has been in the news so much that people self-prescribing and buying it on the market, and so many famous people have died from use of it. How can how can ketamine be used to help the therapeutic process?
Well, I've had experiences with it in my practice that it's been enormously helpful. Like for a person who's chronically depressed, it can help shift their depression. Same with anxiety. For some people who just have trouble feeling as present as they would like to be, that after doing the ketamine work, they feel as though they're able to. I have one person who's an acupuncturist who feels like she's able to be more present in her work and to have better boundaries in terms of, how responsible she is for curing an outcome. That she can practice her craft, but it's, the ultimate, if the person is going to be helped or not, it's not entirely in her control, and she's just much more kind of accepting of that. But people who have had sort of creative blocks and feeling like the ketamine helped them start to get writing again, and people who have been blocked in terms of grief or it can be very useful. But the way that I like to do it in my practice is with kind of a relatively low dose. So I'm looking for the dose where the person will experience significant alteration, but they'll still be able to have a conversation with me. And so, they'll take the medicine and they'll lie down and put on an eye shade, and we'll put on beautiful music, after having kind of set sacred space with a ceremony, doing it in a very sacred way and calling in spiritual guidance and assistance. And then they'll have their journey, and I will scribe as they tell me, talk to me about what's going on for them, and we'll have a conversation. And so it's done in this psychotherapeutic manner. There are these clinics that have sprung up around where they'll get, I'm using a lozenge and relatively low doses. There's, clinics that give high doses, and they give it via IV infusions, and there's no attention paid to set or setting or anything about creating a sacred container or anything about processing it. It's just like the drug. And it can be helpful. There's people with, suicidal depression who, feel helped by it. But I think there's a problem with, not using the medicine in a sacred way, with not, and after our journey, the next day or hopefully within the next week, we'll have an integration session where we'll talk about what happened and try to make sense of it and try to have insights about the whole thing that are important psychospiritually.
I think that's the important thing. I worked with a chiropractor once who did, he would remove blockages from the body, and, and the person would feel the blockage release and then, be hysterical and upset. And I said to him, you're removing a blockage. Why aren't you telling them what the blockage is and how it got there and why it got there? I mean, there has to be counseling of some sort that goes on with this stuff. Oftentimes it was a death experience or abuse of some sort that, was causing this. And you don't release something without the counseling that goes with it. And you obviously do the counseling. I mean, that's the important part of it, because I said to him, if you don't explain it so there's understanding, acceptance, and healing, it's going to come back. It's sort of like you've untied a knot that will retie itself because it wasn't dealt with. So you're putting them through the upset of the release, but then it comes back again. And I said that's not healing. That's creating a patient for life. And I think that what you're doing is it's a multidimensional approach, which is fabulous. And you write about the importance of having a multidimensional sense of self. And Is there any sort of way a person can sort of take inventory and see if there are other aspects that they could be utilizing that would help them to understand themselves on a psychology level, but on a spiritual as well?
Well, like in terms of like having like a spiritual approach to their life. I write about in my book about the anthropologist Angeles Arian, who was an amazing woman. She died in 2014, quite young. She was like in the early 70s. And she went around the world and she looked at different cultures and she observed what are their spiritual practices, what are the commonalities that she could observe cross-culturally. Notice was that there were three things that were common to cultures around the world. One was that everywhere people prayed. So, some people might be allergic to that word, but it's like asking for guidance, asking for help, asking for assistance. It's like just recognizing that, there's something greater than yourself that you can access for assistance and guidance and direction. And then the second thing that she noticed was common to all of them was gratitude, So cultures around the world, people gave praise or they made offerings of appreciation. They just recognized the blessings that there are in their lives. And then the third thing that she identified was like literally taking sacred action. So that means like doing something tangible that uplifts another person or adds to the sum of good in the world or beauty in the world. So that might be creating a beautiful garden for your neighbors, or it might be just recognizing the person who's checking you out at the grocery line and saying, how's your day? Thank you. Like treating them like another human being and not just like a function. It, could be like something like good happens to you and you make a donation to a cause that you love, so you're just like continuing the circulation of like the good energy. So like if a person like looks at their life and they say, oh, I see that I'm, not, I don't have prayer as part of my life. I'm not asking for assistance or guidance. I'm not recognizing that, I'm in relationship with something greater than myself. Well, they can try to kind of up their game in that regard. Same with gratitude. There's like actual, research, evidence-based research about, people who keep a gratitude journal and that when they do, tests of their level of happiness prior to doing the gratitude journal and then subsequently and with a control group who didn't do it, people who keep a gratitude journal are measurably happier. It's just like that practice makes them aware of, wow, like I do appreciate my cup of coffee. These fresh sheets feel so good. Wow, the earth smells so good after the rain. Just these small things that are not like huge, like earth-shattering things, but just the small, simple things to notice and be grateful for. And like keeping a journal and having the intention to be aware in that way can really stimulate that practice and awareness. And then, like, are you doing enough to contribute to making the world a better place in your own small way? It doesn't have to be, like doing something grand, but just in our everyday life, like trying to make the world better every day, make it better for somebody else, make it like some kind of service.
I think, you make an amazing point, and especially the gratitude journal. I used to assign people, and it was like every night before you go to bed, you have to write something down that you're grateful for. And, everybody thought, oh, this is easy. And I said, and the only rule is you can never repeat yourself. Yeah. Sooner or later you get away from nice sunset, nice sunrise, and you have to find something to be grateful for. Before you can go to bed, you have to find something to be grateful for. And then you start reaching inside of yourself, which is a phenomenal experience for most of them. And the first month or so, everybody was, having a very easy time. And then it got to the place where what they were grateful for were very profound things within their life that they had not thought of. So it's
I like
that,
like
process.
Before bed, and I also like when you wake up in the morning. Being granted the precious gift of another day, and acknowledging the beauty and the mystery, and it can be a beautiful practice to. Just put it's very good for supporting the vagus nerve and for calming down the autonomic nervous system to put your hand on your heart and to do some deep breathing and to just imagine somebody who you love or something that you love and bring them to mind and then send the love to them. That's a great way to start your day. That's the whole tone.
I think one of the things that gives me great joy that I love to do is when I'm in the grocery store, I how everybody almost is a robot in the grocery store these days.
Yes.
And
yes.
I look for people who are all alone, and I find something nice to say to them, like, "Oh my God, that color looks great on you," or
Yes, lovely.
And the cool thing is, if done in a genuine way, as you walk past them, you can feel the glow that comes from them.
Oh,
and
that's so nice.
It is just such a wonderful experience. It's so simple, and it's just It is because what happens is when you give joy, you get joy.
Yes, 100%.
And so it's a wonderful practice. But when we're looking at what the world is going through right now, and there's the element of stress that it could not. It doesn't necessarily have to be yours, but we're all experiencing stress, and it's sort of like what kind of advice can we give people today to utilize to help to have them go through the times that we're going through? What are the kind of things that people can do
that's
today?
Really what the book is about. That's what the book is about. It's about this, it's impossible to be resilient to stress when your physical container, your body, is not feeling well, when it's inflamed. So, starting with the physical, really attending to having, a whole foods diet that's anti-inflammatory and being mindful about what you're putting in your body and trying to eat foods that, have the least pesticides as possible and are as fresh as possible. The more you can buy, foods that were grown locally and were recently in the ground, the more energy it gives to you. So really attending to your diet. I really ask my patients not to have any alcohol except for ceremonial occasions and very big celebrations. No kind of regular alcohol consumption. It's terribly important that a person move their body. Being sedentary is very inflammatory and very hard on us. So you need to figure out some kind of movement practice that suits you, that doesn't feel burdensome. So maybe you like to walk, but also, especially as people age, the strength training becomes increasingly vital and important. And, people need to attend to their sleep. Like, that's not anything to skimp on or to shortchange, like having good sleep practices. Like, the body loves routine. It loves to go to bed at the same time, to wake up at the same time, to follow the sun, to tune into the circadian rhythms, to, avoid the blue light, for some hours before bed, to sleep in a darkened room, to have the temperature be cool. Sleep quality is extremely important for health. So, just attending to the physical body in that way is, key to resilience. And then, you mentioned, relationships. Like, make sure that the relationships in your life, as much as you can, are positive, and that they don't cause you stress, and that they don't break your heart and make you feel upset all the time. That is also very inflammatory. And then we talked about spiritual practice, like all of the things that I mentioned, that Angelus Arian identified. Like, that's very important to incorporate into your life. So, approaching your health from a little holistic perspective, like with, mind, body, spirit. If you are still feeling the effects of, growing up in a family where, it was really stressful, and you're still feeling really, in a lot of pain and suffering because of what you endured in the family, then, get some help, get some therapy, get some talk therapy to help you process all of that and to get to a better place with metabolizing all of that. Like, it's just, you need to attend to everything. You can't leave anything out. And that's how you create resilience.
Another practice that I try to do, and now that I've moved down south, it's easier to do, but earthing, walking barefoot on the ground, helps to connect you to the earth, the heartbeat of the earth, of the earth mother.
Absolutely.
And it releases stress. It's amazing.
And it resets your electromagnetic field.
Absolutely. And where I live, we've got a field, and I had them plow a walking path. And so, we can walk in our bare feet. Around it, it's a quarter mile. And
that's lovely.
If you do it barefoot, now, I would say Nashville is a 3-season place, and the season you don't walk is summertime when it's like 99 and 105. But but it what it does is it puts you in synchronicity with the earth, and there's a wonderful, calming, peaceful energy that you get from that, and it's simple. It's in many ways it's a walking meditation.
It's lovely that you have that access to that,
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a blessing.
I have been blessed in so many ways that it's just unbelievable. So, not rich, but very happy.
And one of your biggest blessings is that you know that you're blessed.
Oh, are you kidding? Yeah, but I'm 80 years old. It took a while to get there. I have to admit that in my 30s and 40s, I needed a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, it's wonderful to look back and to say, like, wow, I feel really good about where I've gotten to.
Oh, absolutely. It's. I think that if you can reflect back and not see problems but see successes of overcoming them, and if there's one that's still dangling, then you tie up the loose ends. You have time. I do believe Spirit gives you the time to solve all the issues if you want to solve, if that's really something that's important for you. And I think that what you're doing is what should be done with every kind of modality as far as healing, because you're addressing the total person. And that's what we have to do. We can't just give a pill and say, there, you're fixed, because that doesn't work.
Right.
I mean, sooner 100%. Or later you run out of pills, and it doesn't help.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there are so many healing things that you can take that will actually do the healing process. I think that we need to go back to a lot of homeopathic stuff because that is so much better for us than the drugstore. And some of
that
it
vibrational frequency medicine.
Oh gosh, yeah. It is amazing, and it's the old cures that have been with us for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. And the other thing is dream interpretation, and that's something that's really important too. And I mean, the Greeks had dreaming temples. I mean, it's been used for thousands and thousands of years, and now it's just an interesting book title. But the reality is that the spirit within you will help you to heal if you listen to your dreams.
I'm with you. I'm with you there.
And it made me far more serious about what I was dreaming about, and made me aware of so much else. You know how sometimes you have conversations with yourself about other people that you want to say to them, and then you realize that, wait a minute, that's not right. It allows you to see in your dream state the inappropriateness of what you were going to say. So at least that's worked for me. I don't know if it's worked for everybody, but I do believe that having people look at themselves as a total picture and knowing that they have power and control over just about all of it. And, if not all 98% and the other 2%, they may need help. But I'm so glad that people like you are out there because
thank you so much.
It means that, we're coming full circle, and where you were asked to leave someplace because you insisted on being holistic, it seems to me that more and more people are following in your footsteps, which is a wonderful testimony to your stick-to-itiveness and how you utilize your practice to help people. It's been so, oh my God. I just noticed the time. If people want to get a hold of you, how do they do that? And where can they read more about you?
If they look up my name, Judy Tsafrir, MD, you can come to my website, and I have a newsletter. It's not really a newsletter. It's more of a blog. I write about things that are interesting to me. Very grateful if people were interested in my book, if they would buy it and review it on Amazon. That would be helpful. I also have a new project, which is kind of fun, which is like Instagram and TikTok channel where I make like little videos about things that I care about. Like I just made one on the Ho'oponopono. They're all like different topics. I make like little videos about them, so that's fun. And they can find that under Sacred_Psychiatry.
Okay. Well, I thank you so much for being so flexible with me to hop all over the place till we finally got this show done.
It's been a pleasure and a privilege to talk with you, Barbara. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you for being out there and putting your material out there so people can pay attention to the fact that they have so much control over what's going on in their life. They are not in any way, shape, or form a victim. They are just a challenge to their internal spirit, and that's why we're here. So thank you so much for being with me today.
All right.
And
thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank everybody for joining us. Please take a look at this book. It's so informative, and it's so positive, and it's so encouraging. It gives you, it takes control out of other people's hands and puts it into your hands, and you're the one that heals yourself for the most part. Take care now, and I will talk to you all on Monday. Bye-bye.